Well, you'll notice that the number of this tutorial is a little different, and that's because as I went on to later tutorials, I really thought, I need to go back and lay a groundwork to discuss more how the drop third and the drop fifth chords relate to one another. I felt like I didn't give enough context. And I also want to lay some of a foundation for how we understand chords within a key. I'm going to move pretty fast, but the nice thing about this video tutorial is you can always go back and re-watch it. All right, a major chord, major key, key of C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. On each scale degree, I can build a chord with that scale degree as my root. And so I'm going to call these chords the same numbers of the scale degree, but I'm going to use Roman numerals. So this would be a 1 chord, which is major, a 2 chord, which is minor, a 3 chord, which is minor, 4 chord, which is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor. We typically don't use the 7, it's a diminished, and then back to 1. You notice that I'm building a chord on each member of the scale using only notes in the scale or in the key. Now, rather than just memorizing which are major and which are minor, I want to give you a way to understand how these chords function in a hierarchy, how they relate together, and I think that'll be a lot easier. Let's begin with the 1 chord. This is the home chord, or we actually call it the tonic. Now this is going to be the chord, whatever key you're in, this is your home. Now there's two kinds of root movement, two kinds of primary ways that we can move away from the 1 chord. The first is going to be through that drop fifth relationship that I talked about. I'm going to do the same thing, I'm just going to move up here. This is to the 4 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4. We call it the subdominant. This is a pretty static relationship. I can go back and forth all day long in this. And it doesn't feel like it has to go somewhere. There's another kind of root movement, and that is this. One to the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We call this the dominant. This is a stronger movement, meaning it wants to go somewhere. So we have 3 kinds of primary chords in any major key. You can think of them like primary colors, the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord. Now these are the only 3 major chords in a major key. And with these 3 chords, you can play pretty much any song. I would demonstrate a song, but really the sky's the limit. There's almost, well, with a couple exceptions, any song in a major key, pretty much, you could play these chords and you could fill out the song. Now, as a side note, I want to say, as a follow-up to the earlier tutorial, remember that we talked about adding the major 7 to color a chord? It's important to know that this really only works with 2 kinds of chords, the 1 chord and the 4 chord. Now, it's important to know this, first of all, because these are major chords. It doesn't work. It doesn't have the same kind of sweetness to it on other chords. You say, why doesn't it work with my other kind of major chord, which is a 5 chord? That's because if you add that half step below it, below the root, it's not in the key, so it doesn't fit. In that context, if you add the 7th that is in the key, it uses that chord that we said we typically don't use. So just as a side note, to say that if you are going to use that 7th coloration, you typically only use it with the 1, but you can also use it with the 4. Okay, it's your turn. Play a 1, 4, 5, 1 progression in the following keys: C, G, D, and F. Now keep your voicings simple. Just get comfortable with the basic chords. If you want to add a little bit of that major 7th coloration, you can. And then I'm going to demonstrate. Okay, I already kind of did the key of C, but I'm gonna go ahead and play the key of G. Here's the 1 chord. Here's the 4 chord. Here's the 5. Back to 1. Here's the key of D. Here's the 1 chord. Here's the 4 chord. Here's the 5. Here's the 1. And here's the key of F. Here's the 4 chord, which is a B flat. Here's the 5 chord, which is a C, and back to F. Now, I would really recommend that you practice this simple progression in every key. Obviously, there's lots of ways that you could voice it. Just keep it simple, but it's really important that you become familiar or comfortable, fluent with the primary chords in every key. You need to play whatever key works best for the singers and the other instruments. So, guitar players have a capo, but as a piano player, you need to be fluent in any key. So again, I'd recommend playing the 1, 4, 5, 1 progression in every key. Yes, even B major. We sometimes sing songs in B major because that's what works. Or F sharp major if that's what it calls for. So even in F sharp major, here's the 1 chord. The 4 chord is a B. 5 chord is a C sharp major. Back to F sharp. Obviously that's less common, but I'd recommend playing this progression in every key.